Meanwhile, the house of all-powerful Olympus was thrown open, and the father of the gods and king of men summoned a council to his palace among the stars, from whose steep heights he looked down upon all the lands of the earth, upon the Trojan camp and the peoples of Latium. The gods sat in their chamber, open east and west to the light, and Jupiter began to speak. O great dwellers in the sky, why have you gone back on your word? Why do you contend with such bitterness of heart? I had forbidden Italy to clash with the Trojans. Why is there discord against my express command? What has made them afraid and induced them to take up arms and make each other draw the sword? The time will come for war. There is no need to hasten it, when barbarous Carthage will let destruction loose upon the citadels of Rome, opening up the Alps and sending them against Italy. That will be the time for pillaging, and for hate to vie with hate. But now let it be. A treaty has been decided upon. Accept it and be content. These were the few words spoken by Jupiter, but when golden Venus replied, her words were not few. Father, imperishable power over men and over all the world, how could there be any other to whom we might address our prayers? You see the Rutulians rampant, and Turnus riding in glory in the midst of them, swollen with the success of his arms. A closed ring of fortifications no longer offers protection to the Trojans. They now have to fight hand to hand inside their gates, even on the ramparts of their walls, and their ditches are swimming with blood. Aeneas is far away and knows nothing of this. Will you never allow them to be free of besiegers? Even as Troy is being reborn, a new enemy is threatening its walls with a new army behind him. And from Arpi the Aetolian Diomede is once more rising against the Trojans. I suppose I shall soon be wounded again. After all, mortals are at war and your daughter stands in their way. If the Trojans have come to Italy without your approval, in defiance of your heavenly will, they must be punished for their sins, and you must not raise a finger to help them. But if they have obeyed all the commands they have received from the gods above and the shades below, how can anyone overturn what you have ordered or fashion a new destiny? You have seen their ships burned on the shores of my own son Eryx. You have seen the king of the storms and his raging winds roused out of their Aeolian island. You have seen Iris driven down from the clouds. And now she even turns to the one remaining part of the world and stirs up the powers below. Alecto has suddenly been let loose upon the earth and has run wild through all the cities in the middle of Italy. I no longer give a thought to empire. That was our hope, as you well know, while our fortunes remained. But those who must prevail are those you wish to prevail. If there is no region on earth that your cruel queen could concede to the Trojans, I beg of you, Father, by the smoking ruins of the sacked city of Troy, allow me to take Ascanius safely out of the war. Allow my grandson to live. As for Aeneas, let him be tossed by storms in unknown waters and go the road that fortune gives him. But grant me the power to protect Ascanius and take him out of this fearful battle. I have Amanthus, I have lofty Paphos and Cythera, and my palace at Idalium. Let him lay down his arms and there live out his life in obscurity, while you give the order for Italy to be crushed beneath the mighty empire of Carthage. The cities of Tyre will have nothing to fear from Ascanius. What good has it done him to escape the plague of war and come safe through the middle of all the fires of the Greeks, to have drained the cup of danger over all the vast earth and sea, while the Trojans have been searching for Latium and a new Pergamum? Would it not have been better for them to settle on the dead ashes of their native land, on the soil that was once Troy? Take pity on them, I beg you, and if the wretched Trojans must live again the fall of Troy, give them back their Xanthus and their Simois. At this, Juno, Queen of Heaven, burst out, wild with rage. Why do you force me to break my deep silence? The scars have formed over my wounds. Why do you make me speak and reopen them? Neither man nor God compelled Aeneas to choose the ways of war and confront King Latinus as an enemy. We are told he has the authority of the Fates for coming to Italy. The Fates, indeed! He was goaded into it by the ravings of Cassandra. And did we urge him to abandon his camp, or put his life at the mercy of the winds? Did we advise him to entrust his fortifications and the whole management of the war to a boy? To disturb the loyalty of the Etruscans and stir up a peaceful people? Was it a god that drove him to dishonesty? Was it some cruel power of mine? Where is Juno in all this? Where is Iris sent down from the clouds? It is wrong, we hear, for Italians to ring Troy with fire at the moment of its birth, and for Turnus to take his stand in the land of his fathers. Turnus, whose grandfather was Polymnus, and whose mother was the goddess Venilia. Why then is it right for Trojans to raise the black smoking torches of war against Latins, to put other men's lands under their yoke, to carry off plunder, to pick and choose who are to be their fathers-in-law, to tear brides from their mothers' laps, and to hold out the olive branch of peace with their weapons fixed on the high sterns of their ships? You can steal Aeneas away from the hands of the Greeks, and where there was a man, you can spread a cloud with empty winds. You can change ships into sea nymphs. Is it an impiety if we, in our turn, have given some help to the Rutulians? Aeneas, you tell us, is far away and knows nothing of all this. Keep him in ignorance and let him stay away. You have Paphos and Idalium. You have the heights of Cythera. Why do you concern yourself with those rough-hearted Italians and their city teeming with war? You claim we are trying to overturn from the foundations the tottering fortunes of these Phrygians from Troy. No! Who was it who put your wretched Trojans at the mercy of the Greeks? What caused Europe and Asia to rise in arms and betray the sacred ties of friendship? Was I in the lead when the Trojan adulterer stormed the walls of Sparta? Did I hand him his weapons? Was it I who kindled the fires of war with lust? That was when you should have feared your people. Now, when it is too late, you get to your feet with these complaints and lies and hurl this empty abuse. As Juno was making her plea, all the gods began to murmur in support or in dissent. It was like the murmuring of a storm when the first breeze is caught in a wood and the rustling rolls through the trees unseen, warning sailors that winds are on the way. Then the all-powerful Father, the highest power in all the universe, began to speak, and at his voice the lofty palace of the gods fell silent. The earth trembled to its foundations, and the heights of heaven were hushed. The winds in that moment were stilled, and the sea kept its waves at peace. So be it, he said. Hear my words, and lay them to your hearts. Since you have not allowed the people of Ausonia to be joined in a treaty with the Trojans, and since there is no end to this discord of yours, this day let each man face his own fortune and set his course by his own hopes. Trojan and Rutulian I shall treat alike, whether this camp is blockaded by the destiny of Italy, or because of the folly and wickedness of the Trojans and false prophecies they have received. As each man has set up his loom, so will he endure the labour and the fortune of it. I do not exempt the Rutilians. Jupiter is the same king to all men. The fates will find their way. Then, swearing an oath by the waves of the Styx, his brother's river, by the banks and dark whirlpools of that pitch-black torrent, he nodded, and his nod shook the whole of Olympus. There were no more words. He rose from his golden throne, and the heavenly gods thronged around him and escorted him to the threshold. The Rutilians, meanwhile, were fighting hard round each of the gates to bring down their enemies in blood and ring their walls with fire, while Aeneas's legion was trapped inside its own ramparts with no hope of escape. Helpless and desperate, they stood on their high towers and manned the circle of their walls with a thin line of defenders. Asius, son of Imbrasus, Thymoetes, son of Hiketeon, the two Assaraki, and old Thymbrus, alongside Castor, were there in the forefront of the battle, and the two brothers of Sarpedon were with them, Clarus and Thamon, from the mountains of Lycia. Acmon of Lyrnesus, as great a warrior as his father Clytius or his brother Mnestheus, was putting out all his strength to carry a boulder, no small part of a mountain, while they strove to defend their camp by throwing rocks and javelins, or hurling fire and fitting arrows to the string. There in the middle of them, with his noble head bared, stood the boy Ascanius, for whom the goddess Venus cares above all others, and rightly cares. He was like a gem sparkling in its gold setting, an adornment for a head or a neck, or like glowing ivory skilfully inlaid in boxwood or Aurician terebinth, and his long hair lay on his milk-white neck, held in place by a circlet of soft gold. There too was Ismarus. The warriors of those great-hearted peoples could see him tipping his arrows with poison and aiming them at the enemy. He was the offshoot of a noble house in Maeonia, where men worked the rich lands, and the river Pactolus watered them with gold. Mnestheus also was there, raised to the heights of glory for his recent repulse of Turnus out of the ring of the walls. Capys, too, who gives his name to the city of Capua in Campania. These were the men who clashed that day in bitter fighting in the middle of the night that followed. Aeneas was ploughing the waves of the ocean. After leaving King Evander, he had entered the Etruscan camp and gone to their king to tell him his name and nation, what he wanted, what he offered, and what armed forces Mezentius was winning to his support. He told him too of the violent passions of Turnus, and reminded him that in human affairs there is no room for certainty, and to all this he added his appeal for help. Tarchon instantly joined forces with him and made a treaty. Then these Etruscans, these men of Lydian stock, having paid their debts to destiny, put to sea and committed themselves to a foreign leader in accordance with the will of the gods. Aeneas' ship took the lead. Phrygian lions were yoked to it for a beak, and above them the figurehead was Mount Ida, a sight most dear to the Trojan exiles. Here sat great Aeneas, turning over in his mind the varied chances of war, and all the while young Pallas stayed close by his left side, asking him now about the stars and the course they were steering through the darkness of the night, now about all he had suffered by land and sea. Now, goddesses, it is time to open up Mount Helicon, to set your songs in motion, and tell of the army which came that night with Aeneas from the shores of Etruria, to say who fitted out the ships and who sailed in them across the ocean. Massicus was the first, cutting through the water on the bronze-plated Tiger. Under him sailed a band of 1,000 warriors who had left behind them the walls of Clusium and the city of Cosae. Their weapons were arrows carried in light quivers on their shoulders and death-dealing bows. With them sailed grim Abas, whose whole troop shone in brilliant armour, and a gilded Apollo gleamed on the stern of his ship. Populonia, his motherland, had given him 600 fighting men, skilful in the wars, while 300 came from Elua, the island of the Chalybes, teeming with its inexhaustible ores. The third ship was sailed by Aeschylus, the great mediator between gods and men, master of the stars of the sky, and the entrails of the beasts of the field, of bird cries, and the prescient fires of lightning. He sped along, leading 1,000 men in close formation, with their spears bristling. Pisa put them under his command, a city on Etruscan soil, but founded by men from the Alpheus, the river of Olympia. Next in line sailed fair Astir, whose trust was in his horse and in his iridescent armour. To him were joined 300 men, and all were one in their zeal to follow him. Men whose home was Caere, men from the fields of Minio, from ancient Pyrgi, and the unwholesome swamp of Gravisce. Nor could I pass over Cunurus, so brave in war, the leader of the Ligurians, nor Cupavo, with his small band of fighting men. High above his head tossed the swan feathers that were a token of his father's change of form. All the fault of the god of love. They say that Cycnus sought comfort from the muse for the sadness of his love by singing of the loss of his dear Phaethon in the green shade of the poplars that had been Phaethon's sisters. There, when he grew old, he put on soft white plumage and rose from the earth, singing as he flew toward the stars. It was his son who now commanded the huge centaur, driving it along under the oar, and with him in his fleet he took a throng of his peers. The centaur figurehead loomed over the waters, threatening to hurl down a massive rock into the waves from its dizzy height, and the long keel ploughed its furrow deep in the sea. There too was Ocnus, driving on an army from his fatherland. He was the son of Manto, the prophetess, and the Tuscan river Tiber. To you, Mantua, he gave your walls, and the name of his mother, Mantua, rich in the roll of its forefathers, and not all of one race, but of 3, and in each race 4 peoples. Of all these peoples, Mantua is the head, and its strength comes from its Etruscan blood. From here too, Mezentius had roused 500 men to fight against him, and these the river Mincius, veiled in blue-green reeds, led down to the sea in their ships of war from his father, Lake Benacus. There sailed Orestes, heavy in the water, but rising as his 100 oars thrashed the waves and churned the marble of the sea to foam. He sailed the monstrous Triton, which terrified the blue sea with its horn. As it swam along, its figurehead showed a shaggy front like a man as far as its flanks, but its belly ended in a monster of the deep. While under the breast of this creature, half man, half beast, the waves foamed and murmured. These were the chosen leaders, who went to the help of Troy in their 30 ships and ploughed the plains of salt with bronze. By now the day had left the sky, and Phoebe, the kindly goddess of the moon, was pounding the middle of Olympus with the hooves of her night-wandering horses. Duty allowed no rest to the limbs of Aeneas. As he sat, controlling the tiller and seeing to the sails, a band of his old comrades came suddenly towards him in mid-voyage. They were nymphs, the nymphs into whom his ships had been changed, at the bidding of the kindly mother goddess, Cybele. and they now held divine power over the sea. They were there, swimming in line, as many of them now cleaving the waves as had then stood to the shore with bronze-plated prows. They recognized their king from a distance and danced around him in the water. And Cymodocea, the best speaker among them, came behind his ship, and putting her right hand on its stern, raised her back out of the water, while her left hand was below the surface, oaring silently along. Aeneas was still bewildered when she began to speak to him. "Are you awake, Aeneas?" she asked. "Son of the gods? Wake then, and let out the sail ropes. We are the pines from the sacred top of Mount Ida, now sea nymphs. We are your fleet. When the treacherous Rutulian was pressing us hard with fire and sword, against our wishes we had to break the moorings you gave us. And now we have been looking for you all over the ocean. Mother Cybele took pity on us and gave us this new form, allowing us to become goddesses and spend our lives beneath the waves. But the boy Ascanius is trapped behind a wall and ditches, surrounded by missiles and by Latins bristling with war. The Arcadian cavalry from Pallantium are now in their places as ordered, along with the brave Etruscans, and Turnus has firmly resolved to prevent them joining forces with the Trojan camp by taking up position between them with his own troops. Up with you then, and at the first coming of dawn order your allies to arms, and then take up the invincible shield with its rim of gold given to you by the god of fire himself. Tomorrow's light, unless you think these are empty words of mine, will see the field of battle heaped high with Rutulian dead." So she spoke. As she left him, she gave the high stern a push with her right hand, and well she knew the art of it. The ship flew through the waves faster than a javelin or wind-swift arrow, and the others sped along behind it. The leader of the Trojans, the son of Anchises, was struck dumb with bewilderment, but his heart lifted at the omen, and looking up to the vault of heaven, he uttered this short prayer. "Kindly Mother of the gods, dweller on Ida, who takes delight in Mount Dindymus, in cities crowned with towers, and in the lion pair responsive to your chariot reins, be now my leader in this battle. Bring near to us the due fulfillment of your omen. Stand by the side of your Phrygians and give us your divine blessing." These were his words, and even as he spoke them, the revolving day was already rushing back to its full brightness and had put the darkness to flight. His first thought was to order his allies to follow the standards and to fit their minds for the use of their weapons and prepare themselves for battle. And now, as soon as Aeneas, standing high on the stern of his ship, could see the Trojans and his own camp, at that moment he lifted the shield on his left arm and made it flash. The Trojans on the wall raised a shout to heaven, fresh hope renewing their anger, and they hurled their spears like cranes from the river Strymon in Thrace, giving out their signals under the black clouds, trumpeting as they crossed the sky and flying before the storm winds with exultant cries. The Rutulian king and the leaders of Italy were amazed until they turned round and saw a fleet making for the shore and a whole sea of ships gliding in toward them. On the head of Aeneas there blazed a tongue of fire. Baleful flames poured from the top of his crest, and the golden boss of his shield belched great streams of fire, like the gloomy blood-red glow of a comet on a clear night, or the dismal blaze of Sirius the dog-star, shedding its sinister light across the sky and bringing thirst and disease to suffering mortals. But the bold confidence of Turnus never wavered as he quickly took up position on the shore to repel the landing. "This is the answer to your prayer," he cried. "Now is the time to break them. Brave men have the god of war in their own right arms." Each of you must now think of his own wife, his own home, and remember the great deeds which brought glory to our fathers. Let us go down to the sea to meet them while they are still in confusion and finding their feet after landing. Fortune favours the bold." So he spoke, and pondered in his mind who could be led against the fleet, and who could be trusted to keep up the siege of the walls. Meanwhile, Aeneas was landing his allies by gangplanks from the high sterns. Many waited for the spent waves to be sucked back, and then took a leap into shallow water. Others were clambering down the oars. Tarchon, who had been looking out for a stretch of shore where there seemed to be no shoals and no grumbling of broken water, where the swelling tide could come in without obstruction, suddenly swung his ship round and appealed to his comrades. "Now, my chosen band, now bend to your stout oars. Up with your ships out of the water. Take the weight of them, split with your rams this land that we hate, and let each keel plough its own furrow. I do not care if my ship is wrecked by such a mooring, if only we take possession of this land." When Tarchon had spoken, his comrades rose to their oars and drove their ships, foaming at the prow, hard onto the soil at Latium, till their beaks struck home on dry land and their keels were safely settled. But not yours, Tarchon. You ran aground on a shoal, and hung there seesawing on the dangerous ridge of a rock, till at last the waves were weary of you, and your ship broke up, throwing your men into the sea to be tangled in smashed oars and floating thwarts, as the undertow of the waves kept taking the feet from them. Oh, that sucks. Turnus was no sluggard. Wasting no time, he eagerly led his whole force to face the Trojans, and drew them up at the ready on the shore. The trumpets sounded, and Aeneas was the first to move against the army of the country people of Latium, and lay them low. This was an omen of the battle that was to come. Theron was the first to fall. He was the tallest of their warriors, and had taken it upon himself to attack Aeneas. Through the mesh of his chainmail of bronze, through his tunic stiffened with threads of gold, Aeneas tore a huge gash with his sword in the flesh of his side. He then struck Lycus. His mother was already dead when Lycus was cut from her womb and dedicated to Phoebus Apollo, the god of healing. Little good did it do the baby to escape the hazard of steel at birth. Next, Aeneas saw huge Gyas and tough Cisseus, felling the embattled Trojans with their clubs, and sent them down to death. Nothing could help them now, not the weapons of Hercules, nor the strength of their hands, nor their father Melampus, who had stood by the side of Hercules as long as the earth supplied him with heavy labours to perform. There was Pharos, hurling his empty threats, till Aeneas spun the javelin and planted it in his throat even as he shouted. You too, Sidon, desperately following your latest beloved, Clytius, with the first gold down on his cheeks, would have forgotten the young men you were always in love with. You would have fallen by the right hand of a Trojan and lain there for men to pity, had Aeneas not been confronted by 7 brothers in serried ranks, the sons of Phorcus, hurling their 7 spears. Some rebounded harmlessly from his helmet or his shield. Others his loving mother Venus deflected, so that they only grazed his body, and Aeneas addressed his faithful Achates. Pile up some javelins for me. No weapon that has stood in the body of a Greek on the plains of Troy will spin in vain from my right hand against Rutulians. He then caught up a great spear and hurled it. Flying through the air, it beat through the bronze of Maeon's shield, and shattered in one instant the breastplate and the breast. Alcanor came to help him as he fell, a brother's right hand to support a brother. Through Alcanor's arm went the spear of Aeneas, and flew on its way dripping with his blood, while the dying arm hung by its tendons from the shoulder. Another brother, Numitor, snatched the weapon from Maeon's body and aimed at Aeneas in return, but was not allowed to strike him, only to graze the thigh of great Achates. Then came Clausus of Curis, in all the pride of his youthful strength, and with a long-range cast of his unbending spear, he struck Dryops full force under the chin. It went straight through his throat, and took from him in one moment, even as he spoke, his voice and his life's breath. His forehead struck the ground, and his mouth vomited great gouts of blood. Then Aeneas laid 3 Thracians low, men from the exalted stock of Boreas. Then 3 more sent by their father Idas, from their fatherland Ismara, all by different forms of death. Helesus came running to the spot with his Auruncans, Messapus too, son of Neptune, whose horses drew every eye. Trojans and Latins were battling on the very threshold of Italy, each striving to dislodge the other, like opposing winds fighting their wars in the great reaches of the sky. Equal in spirit and equal in strength, they do not give way to one another, neither the winds themselves, nor the clouds, nor the sea. But long rages the fight, undecided, and they all stand locked in battle. Just so clashed the armies of Troy and the armies of Latium. Foot planted against foot, and man face to face with man. In another part of the battle, where a torrent had rolled down boulders and trees uprooted from its banks, and strewn them everywhere, Pallas saw his Arcadians, who had for once advanced on foot, now retreating with Latins in hot pursuit. The floods had so roughened the ground that they had decided to abandon their horses. One course alone remained, to fire the valour of his men by appeals and bitter reproaches. "Where are you running to, comrades? I beg you, by your pride in yourselves, by your bravery in time past, by the name of Evander, your leader, by the wars you have won, by the hopes rising in me to gain glory like my fathers, this is no time to trust to your feet. It is swords you need to cut your way through the enemy, there where the moil is thickest, where the attack is fiercest. That is where your proud fatherland requires you and your leader Pallas to go. These are not gods who are pressing you so hard, they are mortals pursuing mortals. Like us, they have 2 hands, and like us, they have 1 life to lose. Look about you. The great barrier of ocean closes us in. There is no more land to run to. Shall we take to the sea? Shall we set course for Troy?" With these words, he threw himself into the thick of his enemies. The first man to meet him, drawn there by an unkindly fate, was Lagus. While he was trying to tear loose a great heavy rock, Pallas hurled his spear and struck him in the middle of the back, where the spine divides the ribs. Ouch! Pallas was pulling out the weapon, which had wedged between the bones, when his bow swooped on him, hoping to take him by surprise. But Pallas caught him first in the fury of his charge, made reckless by the cruel death of his comrade. His bow's lungs were swollen. Pallas buried his sword in them. He then turned on Sthenius, then on Anchimolus, of the ancient stock of Rhotus, who had shamefully debauched his own stepmother. Oh, dear God! You too fell on the Rutulian fields, Laridas and Thymber, sons of Daucus, identical twins, a source of confusion and delight to your parents. But Pallas made a grim difference between you. With the sword of his father Evander, he removed the head of Thymber and cut off the hands of Laridas. As it lay there, it groped for its owner, and the fingers twitched, still half alive, and kept clutching at the sword. The Arcadians were stung by Pallas's reproaches, and they watched his glorious feats. Remorse and shame armed them against their enemies. Then Pallas put a spear through Rhotius, as he fled past on his 2-horse chariot, and gave that much respite and reprieve to Ilus. For it was against Ilus that Pallas had aimed a long throw with his mighty spear, but Dorotheus had come between them and taken the blow while fleeing from the great Teuthras and his brother Tyrus. He rolled from his chariot and died with his heels drumming on the Rutulian ploughland. Just as a shepherd fires a wood at different points when the summer winds get up at last, and suddenly all the flames merge in the middle to make one bristling battlefront of fire stretching over the broad plain, and there he sits in triumph, looking down on the exulting blaze. Just so, Pallas, did the valour of your young men all come together in one, and put joy in your heart. But Halesus was a fierce warrior, and he made straight for the enemies that stood in front of him, gathering all his strength behind his weapons. Ladon and Pheres and Demodocus he slew, and his flashing sword ripped off the right hand of Strymonius, as it was poised to lunge at his throat. Thoas he struck with a rock in the face, shattering the bones and grinding them into the blood-soaked brains. Halesus was next. His father, foreseeing the future, had hidden him in the woods, but when the father grew old, and his whitening eyes dissolved in death, the fates laid a hand on the son and consecrated him to Evander's spear. This was the prayer of Pallas before he attacked. Grant now, O Father Thybris, that the spear I am holding poised to throw may reach the mark and go through the stout breast of Halesus. And I shall strip these arms of his from his body and hang them on your sacred oak as spoils. The god heard his prayer. As the hapless Halesus protected Imaon, he left his breast exposed to the Arcadian spear. But Lausus, who was bearing the brunt of the battle, did not allow his men to be dismayed by all this slaughter done by Pallas. First of all he slew Abas as he stood before him, the very knot and stumbling block of war. The youth of Arcadia were laid low, and the Etruscans fell beside them. And you too, Trojans, who had faced the Greeks unscathed. The armies clashed, equal in their leaders and in their strength, and the wings of the battle line were forced into the centre so that men could not raise a hand or a weapon in the crowd. On the one side Pallas thrust and pressed, on the other Lausus. They were almost of an age, and noble in appearance, but fortune had denied each of them a homecoming. Yet the ruler of high Olympus did not yet allow their paths to cross, reserving for each his own death at the hand of a stronger enemy. Spoilers. Meanwhile, after Juturna had advised her dear brother Turnus to take the place of Lausus, he cut through the middle of the ranks of warriors on his swift chariot, and as soon as he saw his allies, he called out, "Time now to stand down from the fighting. I am the only one who attacks Pallas. Pallas is mine, and mine alone. I wish his father were here to see it." So he spoke, and his allies left the ground clear as ordered. When the Rutulians withdrew, Pallas marvelled at these proud commands, and stood amazed at the sight of Turnus, running his eyes all over that mighty body, his grim stare taking it in, part by part, from where he stood. And these were the words he hurled in reply to the words of the insolent prince. "I shall win rich renown today, either for stripping the corpse of the leader of my country's enemies, or else for a glorious death. My father will bear the one fate as easily as the other. Do not waste your threats on me." With these words he strode on to the level ground in the middle of the battlefield, and the blood of the Arcadians froze in their breasts. Turnus leapt down from his chariot and prepared to come to close quarters on foot. Footstep. flying at him like a lion which had seen from some high vantage point a bull practicing for combat far away on the plain. This is how Turnus appeared as he came on. Pallas made the first attack, judging that Turnus would be within range of a spear cast and hoping that fortune would favour the weaker for his daring. Lifting up his voice to the wide expanse of heaven, he cried, "I call upon you, Hercules of the stock of Alcaeus. By my father's table and by the friendship he offered you when you came as a stranger to his home, stand at my side now, and as I set my hand to this great task, may Turnus, as he dies, see me tear the blood-stained armour off his body, and may the last sight he endures be the face of the man who has defeated him." Hearing the young warrior, Hercules checked the great groan rising from the depth of his heart, and the helpless tears streamed down from his eyes. Then Father Jupiter spoke these loving words to his son. "Each man has his allotted day. All life is brief, and time once past can never be restored. But the task of the brave man is to enlarge his fame by his actions. So many sons of gods fell under the high walls of Troy, and with them fell also my son Sarpedon. Turnus too is called by his own destiny, and has reached the limits of the time he has been given." So he spoke, and instantly turned his eyes away from the Rutulian fields. But Pallas hurled his spear with all his strength, and tore his bright sword from its enclosing scabbard. The spear flew and fell where the armour stood highest on the shoulder of Turnus, forcing its way through the edge of the shield and grazing at last the skin of that huge body. Then Turnus took long aim at Pallas with his steel-pointed hardwood spear, and threw it, saying, "Now see whether mine is any better at piercing." With a shuddering blow it beat through the middle of the shield, through all the plates of iron and of bronze, and all the ox hides that covered it, and unchecked by the breastplate, it bore through that mighty breast. In desperation, Pallas tore the warm blade out of the wound, and blood and life came out together after it, both by the same channel. He fell forward on the wound, his armour ringing on top of his body, and as he died, his bleeding mouth bit the soil of his enemies. Turnus stood over him and said, "Take this message of mine to Evander, you Arcadians, and do not forget it. I am sending him back the Pallas he deserves. Whatever honour there is in a tomb, and any comfort he finds in burying him, these I gladly give him. His hospitality to Aeneas will cost him dear." With these words he planted his left foot on the dead body and tore off the huge heavy baldric. On this great belt an abominable crime was embossed: how in one night, the night of their marriage, a band of young men were foully slain, and their marriage chambers bathed in blood, all worked by Clonus, son of Eurytus, in a wealth of gold. This was the spoil in which Turnus now exulted, and he gloried in the taking of it. The mind of man has no knowledge of what fate holds in store, and observes no limit when fortune raises him up. The time will come when Turnus would gladly pay, and pay richly, to see Pallas alive and unharmed. He will bitterly regret this spoil and the day he took it. A throng of Pallas's comrades laid him on his shield and carried him back with tears and groans. "O Pallas, a great grief and a great glory are coming home to your father. This one day gave you to war, and now takes you from it. And yet you leave behind you huge piles of Rutulian dead. First a rumour of this calamity came flying to Aeneas, and then a reliable messenger to tell him his men were on the very edge of destruction. The Trojans were in retreat, and now was the time to help them. Everything that stood before him he harvested with the sword, cutting a broad swath through the enemy ranks, and burning with rage as he looked for this Turnus flushed with slaughter. Before his eyes he could see Pallas, Evander, everything. The table he had sat down to that day when he first came to their house, and the right hands of friendship they had given him. 4 warrior sons of Sulmo he now captured alive, and 4 reared by Ufens, to sacrifice them as offerings to the shade of Pallas, and pour their captive blood on the flames of his pyre. Next he aimed his deadly spear from long range at Megas, who cleverly ran under it. The quivering spear flew over his head, and he clasped the knees of Aeneas with this prayer: "By the shade of your own father and the hopes you have of Iulus as he grows to manhood, I beg you to spare this life of mine for the sake of my son and my father. Our home is a high-built palace, and buried deep within it I have talents of engraved silver and great weights of gold, both worked and unworked. A Trojan victory does not depend on me. My one life will not make so great a difference." This was Aeneas's reply: "Keep for your children all those talents of silver and gold you talk about. Turnus put an end to such war trading the moment he murdered Pallas. So judges the shade of my father Anchises, and so judges Iulus." When he had spoken, he took Megas's helmet in his left hand, and bending back his neck, when he was still begging for mercy, he drove the sword home to the hilt. Not far away was Aeneas, priest of Phoebus Apollo and Diana Trivia, his temples bound by a headband of sacred wool, all shining white in his white robes and insignia. Aeneas closed with him, drove him across the plain, stood over him when he fell, darkening the whiteness with his great shadow, and took him as his victim. Serestus collected the spoils and carried them back on his shoulders as a trophy to Mars Gradivus. Catullus, of the stock of Vulcan, renewed the battle, and Umbro from the Marcian mountains with him. Aeneas confronted them in all his fury. His sword had already struck off the left hand of Anxur. A stroke of the blade had sent the whole circle of his shield to the ground. He had uttered some great threat, imagining that the strength would be there to make it good. It seemed he was trying to raise his spirits to the skies, and had promised himself that he would live to enjoy grey hairs and a long life. Next, Aeneas, in his fury, was faced by Tarquitus, glorying in his shining armour, the son of Faunus, god of the woods, and the nymph Dryope. Drawing back his spear, Aeneas threw and pinned the great heavy shield to the breastplate. While he was still begging for mercy, and still had much to say, Aeneas smashed his head to the ground, and as he set the warm trunk rolling, these were the words he spoke with hatred in his heart: "Lie there now, you fearsome warrior. Your good mother will not bury you in the earth or burden your body with a family tomb. You will be left for the wild birds, or thrown into the sea to be carried away by the waves, and the hungry fish will come and lick your wounds." Next he pursued and caught Antaeus and Lucas, the front rank of Turnus, and then brave Numa and yellow-haired Chimerus, son of great-hearted Vulcans, who was richest in the land of all the men of Italy, and ruled over silent Amyclae. Aeneas was like Aegeon, who they say had 100 arms and 100 hands, with fire flaming from 50 breasts and 50 mouths. And 50 was the number of swords he drew against the lightning of Jupiter, 50 the number of identical shields he clashed. So seemed Aeneas, raging victorious all over the plain, when once his sword blade had warmed to the work. Imagine him next bearing down on the chariot of Nymphaeus, with 4 horses showing their chests as they stood to meet him. But when they saw Aeneas's great stride and heard his fearsome roar, they wheeled in panic and bolted, throwing their master out of the chariot and stampeding to the shore. Meanwhile, Lucagus was coming into the middle of battle on a chariot drawn by 2 white horses. With him was his brother Liger, handling the reins and controlling the horses, while Lucagus whirled his naked sword about him. Aeneas could not endure to see such fury and fervour, but rushed forward and loomed huge before them with his levelled spear. It was Liger who spoke. "These are not the horses of Diomed you are looking at, or the chariot of Achilles. These are not the plains of Troy. Here in this land today there will be an end to your wars and to your life." Far flew these wild words of Liger. The Trojan was preparing a reply to his enemy, but it was not in words. It was his javelin he hurled. Lucagus had been leaning forward over his horse to urge them on by beating them with the flat of his spear. Now, when he had planted his left foot to the front and was preparing for battle, through the bottom rim of his shining shield came the spear of Aeneas and pierced his left groin. He was pitched from his chariot, and as he lay dying on the ground, good Aeneas addressed these bitter words to him. "It is not the panic of your horses, Lucagus, that has brought your chariot to grief. They did not shy away from the shadow of their enemy. It is your own doing, leaping off the car and abandoning your team." With these words, Aeneas caught the horses' bridles. The wretched brother of Lucagus fell from the chariot and stretched out his helpless hands to Aeneas. "Great Trojan, I implore you, by your own self and by the parents who brought such a man as you into the world, spare this life of mine and take pity on a suppliant." Aeneas cut short his appeal. "This is not what I heard you say a moment ago. Die now. A brother's place is with his brother." And as he spoke, the point of his sword opened the breast of Liger, the hiding place of his soul. So did the Trojan leader deal out death all over the plain, like a raging torrent of water or a storm of black wind, until at last the young Ascanius and his warriors sallied forth and left the camp. The siege was lifted. In the meanwhile, Jupiter came to Juno and said to her, "My true sister, and most pleasing of wives, you are right. It is Venus, as you thought, who is maintaining the strength of the Trojans, not the warlike vigour of their right arms, nor their fierce and danger-hardened spirit." Humbly, Juno replied, "Finest of husbands, why do you cause me anguish when I am in despair and in terror of your harsh commands? If your love for me had that power which once it had, and should still have, you who can do all things would not be refusing me this. I should be able to withdraw Turnus from the battle and keep him safe for his father Dornus. But as things are, let him die. Let him pay the penalty to the Trojans with his righteous blood. Nevertheless, he is descended from our stock. Palumnus was his ancestor in the 4th generation, and his generous hand has often weighed down your threshold with abundant gifts." The king of heavenly Olympus made brief reply, "If what you ask is a stay of the death that is upon him, and respite for a young man who must die, and if you accept that this is what I ordain, then rescue Turnus, let him flee, snatch him from the fates that tread upon his heels. There is room for me to grant you indulgence thus far. But if there is some deeper thought of mercy underlying these appeals of yours, and if you believe that the whole course of the war can be effected or its outcome changed, The hopes which you nourish are empty. Juno replied, weeping as she spoke. What if your heart wished to give what your words refuse? What if you listened to me and let Turnus live? As it is, although he is innocent, a cruel death is waiting for him, unless I am wide of the mark, and there is no truth in me. But oh, how I wish my fears were false and I were deluded. How I wish you would recast your plans, for you can do so, and choose a better course. As soon as the goddess had finished speaking, she flew down from the heights of heaven, swathed in cloud, and driving a great storm before her towards the battle line of Trojans and the Laurentine camp. Then she fashioned out of empty vapour an effigy in the form of Aeneas, a weird sight, a shade without strength or substance, armed with Trojan weapons. She copied his shield and the crest on his godlike head, and gave the phantom power to speak its empty words. Sound without thought she gave it, and moulded its strides as it moved. It was like the flitting shapes which men say are ghosts of the dead, or like the dreams which delude our sleeping senses. There, in high glee in front of the first line of warriors, pranced this apparition and goaded Turnus by brandishing weapons and shouting challenges. Turnus attacked, throwing his whirring spear from long range. The apparition turned tail and fled. At that moment, Turnus believed that Aeneas had turned his back on him and was running away. Taking a wild draught from the empty cup of hope, he cried, "Where are you running to, Aeneas? You must not leave. Your marriage is arranged. This is the land you cross the seas to find, and my right hand will give it to you." Shouting such taunts, he went in pursuit with his sword drawn and flashing, and did not see that all his exultation was scattering to the winds. The ship which King Osinius had sailed from the land of Clusium happened to be moored to a high shelf of rock, with her ladders and gangway out. Here, the panic-stricken phantom of Aeneas fled and hid itself, with Turnus hard behind it. Nothing could delay him. He leapt across the gangways, high above the water, and scarcely had he set foot on the prow, when Saturnian Juno tore the ship from her moorings, breaking the ropes, and took her quietly out to sea on the ebbing tide. But by this time the phantom was no longer looking for a place to hide. It had flown high into the air and melted into a black cloud. Meanwhile Aeneas was calling on Turnus to fight, and there was no Turnus. But every man who crossed his path he sent down to death, and all the time the wind was blowing Turnus round and round in mid-ocean, looking back to the shore in bewilderment and thanking no one for his safety. He raised his arms in prayer and lifted up his voice to the stars of heaven. "All-powerful Father, have you decided that I deserve this disgrace? Have you decreed that I must endure this punishment? Where am I being taken? What have I left behind me? How can I go back after running away? What sort of Turnus would that be? Shall I ever see my camp and the walls of the Laurentines again? And what about the band of great warriors who have followed me and followed my sword? The horror of it! I have left them all to die. I see them wandering about without a leader. I hear them groaning as they fall. What am I to do? If only the earth could open deep enough to swallow me. Or rather, I pray to the winds and pray to them from my heart to take pity on me and drive my ship onto the rocks and cliffs, or run it aground on some shoal of deadly sand, where there will be no Rutulian and no word of my shame can follow me." Even as he spoke, his mind was tossed this way and that, in despair at his disgrace. Should he fall on his sword and drive the raw steel through his ribs? Should he throw himself into the sea and try to swim from mid-ocean back into the curve of the bay to face the weapons of the Trojans once again? 3 times he tried each way, and 3 times mighty Juno held him back, pitying the young man in her heart, and would not let him move. Cutting the deep water, he floated on a favouring tide, and following the waves, came to land in the ancient city of his father Daunus. But Mezentius, meanwhile, by the promptings of Jupiter, took the place of Turnus in the battle, and fell furiously on the triumphant Trojans. Instantly, all the Etruscan troops converged on him alone, united in their hatred, and pressing him hard under a hail of weapons. He stood like a rock jutting out into the ocean wastes, exposed to the threats and fury of wind and wave, and bearing all the violence of sea and sky unmoved. He felled Hebrus, son of Dolichaon, and Laetygus with him, and Pallas as he ran. Laetygus he stopped by hitting him full in the face and mouth with a rock, a huge block broken off a mountain. But he cut the hamstrings of Pallas and left him rolling helpless on the ground. His armour he gave to Lausus to put on his shoulders, and his crest to fix on his helmet. Then it was the turn of Euanthes, the Phrygian, and Mimas, the same age as Paris and his comrade in war. In one night, Theano, wife of Amycus, brought him into the light of life, while Hecuba, daughter of Cisseus, pregnant with a torch, was giving birth to Paris. Paris fell in the city of his fathers, but Mimas lies a stranger on a Laurentine shore. Like the wild boar who has long kept his citadel among the pines of Mount Vesulus, and long have the Laurentine marshes fed him in the reed beds of the forest. When the great beast is driven down from the mountains with the dogs snapping at him, and is caught between the nets, he stands at bay snorting, and the bristles rise on his shoulders, and no one has the courage to clash with him or go near him, but they attack from a safe distance with javelins and shouts, while he stands his ground unafraid, and wondering in which direction to charge, grinding his teeth and shaking the spears out of his back. Even so, none of those men who had just cause of anger against Mezentius was minded to draw the sword and run upon him, but instead they stood well back and bombarded him with missiles and deafening shouts. Acron was a Greek who had come from the ancient land of Corythus, driven into exile while waiting to be married. Mezentius saw him from a distance, causing havoc in the middle of the battle line, in the purple feathers and purple cloak given him by his promised bride. Just as a ravening lion scouring the deep layers of wild beasts, driven mad by the pangs of hunger, if he sights a frightened she-goat, or sees a stag's antlers rising, he opens his great jaws in delight, his mane bristles, and he springs, and fastens on the flesh with foul gore, washing its pitiless mouth. Just so did Mezentius charge hot haste into the thick of the enemy, and felled the unlucky Acron, who breathed out his life, drumming the black earth with his heels, and blooding the weapons broken in his body. Orodes fled, but Mezentius did not deign to cut him down as he ran, or deal him a wound unseen from the back, but came to bar his way and meet him face to face, proving himself the better man by strength in arms, and not by stealth. He then put his foot on his prostrate enemy, and leaned on his spear, calling out, "Here, comrades, lies no small part of their battle strength, Orodes, that stood so tall." His men shouted their glad paean of victory after him, but with his dying breath Orodes replied, "Whoever you are that have conquered me, I shall be revenged. You will not enjoy your victory for long. The same fate is looking out for you, and we shall soon be lying in the same fields." Half smiling, half in anger, Mezentius replied, "Die now. As for me, that will be a matter for the father of the gods and the king of men." And at these words he drew his spear out of the body of Orodes. A cruel rest then came to him, and an iron sleep bore down upon his eyes and closed them in everlasting night. Caedicus cut down Alcathous, Sacrator Hydaspes. Rapo killed Parthenius and Orses, a strong and hardy warrior. Messapus put an end to Clonius and Eurybates, son of Lycaon. Eurybates being on foot, but Clonius lying on the ground, having lost his reins and fallen from his horse. On foot also was Agis the Lycian, who had come out in front of the battle line. But Valerius had some spark of his family's courage, and overthrew him. Thronius was killed by Salius, and Salius by Neocles, famed for his javelin and far-shot arrows. Pitiless Mars was now dealing grief and death to both sides with impartial hand. Victors and vanquished killed and were killed, and neither side thought of flight. In the halls of Jupiter, the gods pitied the futile anger of the two armies and grieved that men had so much suffering. Venus looking on from one side, and Saturnian Juno from the other, while in the thick of all the thousands raged the Fury Tisiphone, pale as death. Then came Mezentius storming over the plain, brandishing a huge spear, as tall as Orion who walks in mid-ocean, cleaving his path through its deepest pools, with his shoulders rising clear of the waves, or strides along carrying an ancient ash from the mountain tops, with his feet on the ground and his head hidden in the clouds. So did Mezentius advance in his massive armour. Aeneas had picked him out in the long ranks of men in front of him, and was going to meet him. Mezentius held his ground, unafraid, and the huge bulk of him stood fast, waiting to receive his great-hearted enemy. Measuring a spear cast with his eye, he cried, "Let the hand which is my god not fail me now, nor the spear which I brandish to throw. My vow is to strip the armour from that brigand's body and clothe you with it, Lausus. My trophy over Aeneas will be my own son." With these words he threw his spear from long range. Hissing as it flew, it bounced off Aeneas' shield and struck the noble Antores as he stood some distance away, entering his body between flank and groin. Antores had been a comrade of Hercules. He had come from Argos but attached himself to Evander, settling with him in his city in Italy. And so, falling cruelly by a wound intended for another, he looked up at the sky and remembered his beloved Argos as he died. Then the devout Aeneas held his spear. Through the circle of Mezentius' convex shield it flew, the triple bronze, the layers of linen, the 3-stitched bull hides, and it struck low in Mezentius' groin. But it had lost its force. Exultant at the sight of Etruscan's blood, Aeneas tore the sword from the scabbard at this thigh. Seeing Mezentius in distress, and Aeneas bearing down on him in hot fury, Lausus moaned bitterly for the father whom he loved, and the tears rolled down his face. "Now, Lausus, I shall tell of your cruel death, and the glorious deeds, in the hope that the distance of time may lead men to believe your great exploit. Never will it be my wish to be silent about you, Lausus. You are a warrior who does not deserve to be forgotten." Mezentius was falling back, defenceless and encumbered, dragging his enemy's spear behind him, stuck in his shield, when young Lausus leapt forward and threw himself between them, just as Aeneas was standing to his full height and raising his arm to strike. He came in beneath the sword blade, blocking Aeneas and checking his advance. Lausus' comrades raised a great shout and supported him by bombarding Aeneas and harassing him with their missiles from long range, till the father could withdraw, protected by the shield of his son. Aeneas, enraged, kept under cover, just as when the clouds descend in a sudden storm of hail, and all the ploughmen and all the workers in the fields scatter across the open ground, and the traveller finds a shore fortress to hide in, under a river bank, or the arch of some high-vaulted rock till the rain stops falling on the earth, so that they can continue to do the work of the day when the sunshine is restored. Just so Aeneas, overwhelmed by missiles from all sides, weathered the storm of war to the last roll of its thunder. And then it was Lausus he challenged, and Lausus he threatened. Why are you in such haste to die? Why do you take on tasks beyond your strength? You are too rash. Your love for your father is deceiving you. But Lausus was in full cry, and his madness knew no check. At this the anger rose even higher in the heart of the leader of the Trojans, and the fates gathered up the last threads for Lausus. Aeneas drove his mighty sword through the middle of the young man's body, burying it to the hilt, the point going straight through his light shield, no proper armour to match the threats he had uttered. It pierced, too, the tunic his mother had woven for him with a soft thread of gold, and filled the folds of it with blood. Then did his life leave his body, and go in sorrow through the air to join the shades. But when Aeneas, son of Anchises, saw the dying face and features, the face strangely white, he groaned from his heart in pity and held out his hand, as there came into his mind the thought of his own devoted love for his father, and he said, "What will devout Aeneas now give to match such merit? What gift can he give that will be worthy of a heart like yours? Take your armour that gave you so much pleasure. Now I return you to the shades and the ashes of your ancestors, if that is any comfort for you. In your misfortune you will have one consolation for your cruel death, that you fell by the hand of great Aeneas." At this he turned on Lausus' comrades, railing at them as they hung back, while he lifted Lausus off the ground, where he was soiling his carefully tended hair with blood. Meanwhile, by the bank of the river Tiber, Lausus' father was staunching his wounds with water and leaning against the trunk of a tree to rest. Nearby his bronze helmet hung from the branches, and his weighty armour lay quiet on the grass. About him stood his chosen warriors as he bathed his neck, gasping with pain, and his great beard streamed down his chest. Again and again he asked about Lausus, and kept sending men to recall him and take him orders from his anxious father. But Lausus was dead, and his weeping comrades were carrying him back on his shield, a mighty warrior laid low by a mighty wound. Mezentius had a presentiment of evil. He heard the wailing in the distance and knew the truth. Then, fouling his grey hair with dust, he raised both hands to heaven and flung himself on his son's body. Was I so besotted with the pleasure of living that I allowed my own son to take my place under my enemy's sword? Is the father to be saved by the wounds of the son? Have you died so that I might live? Now, for the first time, is death bitter to me. Now, for the first time, does a wound go deep. And I have even stained your name, my son, by my crimes. Men hated me and drove me from the throne and sceptre of my fathers. I owed a debt to my country and my people who detested me, and I would to heaven I had paid it with this guilty life of mine by every death a man can die. But I am still alive. I have still not left the world of men and the light of day. But leave it I shall. Even as he was speaking, he was raising himself on his wounded thigh, and slow as he was with the violence of the pain deep in his wound, his spirit was unsubdued. He ordered his horse to be brought. This was his glory and his comfort, and on it he had ridden home victorious from all his wars. Seeing it pining, he spoke to it in these words: "We have lived a long time, Rebus, if any mortal life is long. Either you will be victorious today and carry back the head of Aeneas with the blood-stained spoil stripped from his body, and you and I shall avenge the sufferings of Lausus, or else, if that road is barred and no force can open it, We shall fall together. I do not think, with courage like yours, that you will accept instructions from any other man, or take kindly to Trojan masters." With these words, Mezentius mounted, and Rebus took on his back the weight of the rider he knew so well. Both his hands were laden with sharp-pointed javelins, and on his head he wore his helmet of gleaming bronze with its shaggy horsehair crest. So armed, he galloped into the thick of battle, fierce shame, frenzy, and grief all seething together in his heart. 3 times he shouted the name of Aeneas. Aeneas knew his voice, and offered up this joyful prayer: "Let this be the will of the Father of the Gods. Let this be the will of high Apollo. Stand and fight with me." He said no more, but made for Mezentius with spear at the ready. Mezentius replied, "Now that you have taken my son, you savage, you need not try to frighten me. That was the only way you could have found to destroy me. Death holds no terrors for us, and we give not a thought for the gods. Enough words. I have come here to die. But first, I have these gifts for you." He spoke and hurled a spear at his enemy, then another, and another, planting them in Aeneas's shield as he flew round him in a great circle. But the golden boss of the shield held fast. Aeneas stood there, and Mezentius rode round him 3 times, hurling his spears and keeping Aeneas on his left side. 3 times the Trojan pivoted with him, turning his huge bronze shield, with its bristling forest of bronze spears. Then, weary of all the delay, weary of plucking javelins out of his shield, and hard-pressed in this unequal battle, Aeneas, after turning many plans over in his mind, at last burst forward and threw his spear, catching Mezentius's warhorse in the hollow between its temples. Up it reared, thrashing the air with its hooves and throwing its rider. Then, as it came down with all its weight, dislocating its shoulder, it fell headfirst on the top of Mezentius and pinned him to the ground. The sky blazed with the shouts of Trojans and Latins as Aeneas rushed up, tearing his sword from the sheath and crying, "Where is the bold Mezentius now? Where is that fierce spirit of his?" The Etruscan looked up, drinking in the bright air of heaven, as he came back to his senses and replied, "You are my bitter enemy. Why jeer at me and threaten me with death? There is no sin in killing. I did not come into battle on those terms, and my son Lausus struck no such bargain with you on my behalf. One thing I ask, if the defeated can ask favours from their enemies, to let my body be buried in the earth. I know the bitter hatred of my people is all about me. Protect me, I beg you, from their fury, and let me lie in the grave with my son." These were his last words. He then took the sword in the throat, with full knowledge, and poured out his life's breath in wave upon wave of blood all over his armour.